This is the Authentic Dating series brought to you by Ahmad and David,
where we explore what it takes to have a dating life you're excited about.
Hey guys, I'm David.
I'm Ahmad.
And this is the Authentic Dating series.
Welcome back to another great episode of the Authentic Dating series. We have a very interesting episode. We've decided to delve deep into the darker side of dating, and I know David's very excited about this topic.
I feel like it's a topic that we've kind of almost talking about for like a year and a half, and for whatever reason, like I know for me, like I comes up from around the topic of cheating. It's like, oh, is that the best thing to talk about? Is that about blame and shame? And actually, like in this episode, we just want to, give people insights into it. So I think a lot of the time cheating happens and people apportion blame and responsibility maybe not quite rightly. And they don't see that there's an impact on the person that does the cheating. And we're going to be focusing on men because, we're men and our podcast is aimed at men, and the impact on them, in the relationship as well. And also we're going to focus on kind of how to get out of the cycle of cheating, because I think it's something that people kind of get into absolute cycles of doing. And it's not just a quick fix actually of going, oh, stop cheating, sort your shit out kind of thing. I think it's deeper rooted than that.
Yeah, I think it's important to speak candidly about it. Like you say, it's probably something that happens a lot more than a lot of us would like to think. But also, I think it's also interesting that, at least from what I've seen online, that largely it's often spoken about in one way, or just mostly from the impact on the person being cheated on. And I think that doesn't help really for people to understand like the full both sides of the story type thing, or even, how to then affect change, because it just seems like there's a bad and evil person. So if you haven't figured it out already, what we're going to be talking about today is cheating. So we're going to be talking about cheating. But before that, any announcements? I think we always like to make a little announcement or two.
No, there's nothing I can think of off the top of my head, actually.
Well, I'll just make an announcement about our coaching. I like it. So, what to say? What to say this week is, we incredibly enjoy our coaching structure and delivering that, and really helping men to find their own unique voice and expression in their dating and in their life. And so, if you're interested in really taking your dating success to the next level, we're coming to the end of 2020. Some are saying thank God, and so we come to the end of 2020. If you're looking to actually really get some dating success in 2021, now is a great time to talk to us about our coaching program, because it's something that we haven't seen anywhere else on the market in how we approach things. We're looking at things holistically. We're looking at your lifestyle. We're looking at how you dress and how you express yourself. We're looking at actually what's there for you and what's in your way. And it's very bespoke to you. It's not something that, we're not going to give you pages of lines that work or anything like that. It's all about you learning, like, what is your truest expression.
Yeah. And, if you've listened to our podcast before, and if this is the first time you listen to this one, you're going to get a sense for the sort of depth that we go to. And really our coaching goes even deeper than that. We really do delve into what's really going on. We're not just going to go, oh, okay, you're struggling to express yourself, say these 15 things and all women will love you. It's like, no, we delve into like, why is that you're struggling to express yourself? Where does that come from? What feelings are coming up for you when you have to be in conversation? And we work through those things. We don't just put band-aids on problems.
Yeah.
We look to get to the root cancer of what's causing your dating life to really not being the shape that you want it to be. And I think in these times of, isolation and so forth, the secondary bonus you get with coaching with us is actually you get to speak to two men who will be radically honest with you about your behavior and what's going on for you, and be there for you and hold you accountable to your highest goals, your highest wants and needs. And I think that in itself is a reason that you should come to us for coaching, to be honest, because I know it's something I look back 10 years and that was a struggle for me to find people who were wise and had wisdom and would speak openly and honestly about the topics of love and dating and emotions and feelings and sex and all the things around that as a man. And it's something that we keep getting with our coaching clients is like, they say to us, it's so nice to be able to talk to other men about these issues and talk honestly and openly in a way that there's no one's being judged. We're all here to powerfully serve and help.
Beautifully put. So, if you're interested, get in touch. The best way to reach us is on our email, which is hello@authenticdatingseries.com, or you can reach out to us on our Instagram @authenticdatingseries. These are the two best ways to reach us. I don't think there's other than calling us on a mobile, but really, I think the best way is by email. We'll be handing out our mobile just yet. So, get in touch, and we look forward to speaking to you.
Cool. And without further ado, we'll get into the episode. No sound effect this week.
Yeah. I was going to say, there's not much for me to say on this topic, Dave. I'll let you.
No, I think it's one of those topics. Actually, I wanted to start with my full disclosure. It's like I can speak from having been on both sides of cheating. And even like saying that, I'm like, oh, that feeling, you get from doing something you think that is bad and wrong. But actually it actually really helps to talk about it in this way. And like so we're not just speaking hypothetically or from some book we read, like we're talking from men who have experienced these sides of things, like the impact on as a man, the impact is it really runs deep. And actually getting out of that cycle as well is something we can talk about. So, but we'll start with, what do you think, AJ? Why do men cheat? The age-old question. I think there's probably even a question in the Bible about this. Why thou meneth cheateth?
Yeah. So we're going to break this down in three sections. We're going to start with why men cheat, and then we're going to actually talk about the impact on a man who's cheated or who's cheating, and then we're going to end up with how to stop. So it's going to be an action-packed episode. So let's begin. Why do men cheat? So you had a lot to say about this, and I was like, I haven't done a lot of reading around it, but I know there's various reasons as to what stimulates it. A lot of people just look at it like, oh, men cheat, and it's just part of their behavior or something, in the same way that I was going to say a cat scratches or something, but in just some sort of extension of being a man is that men cheat. That's that. If you could, I'm sure you'd find memes like that online. That would say, but they don't describe anything to do with the emotional experience that a man could be going through or why. Like what the psychological thing there is. So, what do you think the number one reason is?
Wow, I think. I kind of think there's two of the top ones, but I think one of the ones I hear from men who have been involved in cheating is actually a lack of sex and intimacy is generally the reason that it's cited. And I think that is a really big problem. That we have this narrative, I'll call it, that we get into relationships and men have high sex drives and women's sex drives diminish over time. And then men are like, well, I deserve, and there's an entitlement here as well. Actually, if you hear quietly in there's a privilege, almost a male privilege of being like, well, I'm entitled to sex, and if my girlfriend or wife isn't giving it to me, then I go somewhere else and get it. And that's often the rhetoric, and like even women have heard this rhetoric so much that men have high sex drives and they'll go elsewhere. That there's many women out there who just accept their boyfriends and husbands cheating on them silently. They do. They know it. They know deep down what's going on. They know when they disappear and so forth. They just kind of accept it, which is, if that's okay with them, then that's cool. But I think this is the reason that's cited most by men is like their partners no longer wanting to have sex, and then feeling that they have their needs and they want to go and get their need met elsewhere.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's definitely one. It seems like the most obvious one in terms of there's a biological driver to have sex, and if it's not being met, then that can be a driver for a man to want to seek it elsewhere. But I think it also ties in with to see if you put it in here. No, I don't see it, but it's like this sense of well, no, you did put it. Yeah, you put it onto like wanting like the relationship to end, or that like there being something wrong in the relationship. I think that
Yeah.
ties quite heavily with that. Is where there's a dissatisfaction
Yeah.
with how things are, and so then not knowing how to communicate
Yeah.
or what to do about that, then it's like, well, eventually it's like a pressure builds up, and
Mm.
then it's like it's got to release somewhere. It's as we learn, like tension. Was it tension always resolves?
Yeah.
Yeah, so tension. It's like a physics thing, right? So energy has to flow somewhere, and so when that's left unchecked, it obviously is going to it's going to leak out, as we say. The energy is going to leak out, and men will find them doing all sorts. And I know that's something where, for me, like in my disclosure of it, is like that's where I found myself cheating in a past relationship, was where there was
Mm.
unhappiness. I felt like I had no sense of control, not over myself, but over like what was happening in the relationship, and
Mm.
no, uh, yeah, it was not. It wasn't even. When I think back, there wasn't even a sense of premeditation. It wasn't like I planned like a picnic. Like I'm going to go out
Mm.
and cheat today. It was like eventually it got to a point in my psyche. It was like all it took was, I suppose, like a spark, a kindle,
Yeah.
of flame for things to then set off in that direction. And yeah, so that for me was on the precipice of like, oh, I'm not happy, and I don't know what my partner wants, and I don't feel free or confident in communicating and in resolving this.
Mm.
I just feel stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. I can really resonate with that. Actually, it's like, for my experience, is like being in a relationship and there's stress, there's arguments, there's conflict,
Mm,
and feeling quite powerless actually.
mm, mm,
And it's like I feel powerless to sort this out, and I need like it's like you said, I need somewhere where I can just, it's relaxed, I can be easy, I can, there's not this stress, attached to things. It's like, can I go and be with someone where it's just fun and
mm,
relaxed, and it is also, yeah, like you said, being able to communicate your needs and wants and actually be able to resolve conflict, I think, is a big one. It's like, if you can't resolve conflict in your relationship, then
mm,
every time you're with your partner, you can be sitting there and you're going to feel that heavy. It's like, yeah, I think we described it before. It's like a fog, in a
mm,
different example, but this fog just hangs between the two of you, and because you can't clear it, it just sits there between you, and it's uncomfortable. There's a feeling of like, there's uncomfortable aspects of relationship and you don't know how to resolve them. So what you do is you have this tension, like you were saying, and the tension's building in you. And your way of releasing that is going to another woman and spending time with them, whether that be sexually or whether that be just like, even just, going on dates. Like I've known guys to actually just go and spend time with other women and just talk,
mm,
because they simply just want to be in an energy of someone where there's no conflict, there's no stress. It's easy breezy.
mm, mm, That's interesting. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's, I think, and I would say like that's probably up there, with some of the highest reasons as why it happens. Some other ones that people often would consider is like a man just wants to roam, like they
Mm.
feels that they miss out on being free, as we put
Yeah.
there. But like, yeah, like and possibly I think that's is erroneously perceived to be the highest one, is like that, this sense of that men just want to roam and be free,
Mm.
uh,
Mm.
or that the feeling of a new relationship, that sort of
Mm.
thing. Yeah, but yeah, I don't think that I think that perhaps exists in a certain character of men, but I wouldn't say that's all men.
Yeah, yeah. I think, like, I agree with you. I think the being free thing is like quite a surface level thing. I
Mm,
think kind of underneath that often is this kind of need for validation as well. The
mm,
need for validation, like what comes from like low self esteem. And if other women are giving you attention, then not being able to being like, oh, I'm getting this attention and I want more attention, I want validation, my self-esteem is low, and just following through with what kind of comes out
Mm,
of that. And that's something I think that we don't always think is like, oh, there's a self-esteem problem here. Actually,
mm,
there is a self-worth issue at the bottom of this for most men, like
mm,
how they view themselves and their own value, um, that really creeps in there. And I think one of the reasons, one reason here, I think is actually probably up there with lack of sex and intimacy, is around how we've grown up with relationships in our childhood. Our
mm,
childhood experience of relationships is filled with either broken relationships, like I
mhm,
definitely in my cases where you don't see relationship work, or secondly, it's where all the men or all the older men you were around, that's what they were doing. They were cheating, they were
mm.
sleeping with other women. Because remember, when we're growing up, we're just absorbing the way that the life is, the way that relationships are. And if that is the way that you absorbed relationships around you, right, as you grow up and you think that is how it is, you
Mm.
will then find much confirmation bias as you grow up to say that is still correct and that's how it is. You will meet people and they will all go, yeah, yeah, I cheat on my wife whenever, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. Like, as long as you don't get caught, kind of thing. And then it becomes your reality.
Yeah, no, I think that's yeah, that's definitely there. That's a good one because it's one again that kind of just gets, like you say, it gets absorbed and it becomes just a part of how things are. Like when I was growing up, iPhones weren't around, but now you look at any kid, they know exactly how to use an iPhone. Like they know exactly
Mm,
how to unlock the thing, use the camera, you do the slidey thing with the finger. Like they know exactly how to use it. It's just part of their life. They're growing up with these devices around them. So in the same way, whatever we experience when we're young is just part and parcel of life. It's just how life is. The sky is
mm,
blue. Men cheat. It's just how
yeah.
it is. So I think that's a very good point.
Yeah. And I think it's just like, all of these, what I'm seeing is like actually, it's like an inability to communicate, an inability to feel confident. I think he's put it really well, as feeling safe and confident to kind of A, deal with conflict, or B, ask for what you want.
Yeah, I think I'd probably say that from what we've discussed so far, that it probably falls into two camps, right? Like there's got the one who they are struggling to communicate and don't know how to say what they want, and then there's the other one that's seeking validation and has that sense of insecurity and needing to always fill that bucket with validation.
Mm,
But doesn't know how else. So that's the sense I'm getting from this discussion, because I think yeah, there's the more emotionally charged version, and then there's one that's like seeking to it's like FOMO, like
yeah, yeah,
constantly needing
yeah,
to be
yeah,
in action, like
yeah, yeah.
and I would also add there as well. Actually, as I say that, what comes to mind is a sense of that looking macho. It's like trying to fit in. It's still in the same
Mm,
camp as the validation, but it's also seeking that validation from men. It's like, oh well, that's I'm a man. That's
I'm the man.
that's how we do, right? Like so so yeah, I still think yeah, there's two camps there, and one highly seeking validation, the other one struggling to express emotion.
Yeah, yeah. I totally agree. And I think there's something in one of the other points that I was thinking is like, I think it kind of ties in with people who are wanting to end the relationship. I think it's something a lot of men do.
Mm,
We get into relationship, and this can happen at the beginning, the end, whatever, and then we realize that maybe we don't want to be in there, but we don't have the ability, whether that be courage or to call it courage, to end the relationship.
mm,
So we cheat, which then confirms to us that we should really end the relationship, which then
mm,
you know allows us to have the courage. Or what often happens is men somehow get, and I'm going to inverted commas, they get caught in some
mm,
way, which then
mm,
causes a relation to end and means they never have to do it themselves. I think
mm.
it's a big part. But I also think there's definitely guys out there, guys I've spoken to, is they doing it almost to get attention from their partners.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think that goes, and like when we're speaking at this level, it goes back to the point you were making earlier about, how we're raised, and the experiences we have that
Mm,
we're raised, and that it creates a dynamic that then, it's like these we essentially we live in stories, right? Like stories that we grew up seeing, hearing, and believing, I suppose, and that creates a dynamic that we then fulfill. So if in a story, like, we get attention by misbehaving, let's say,
mm,
then we learn as a kid that, if I do something wrong, that's how I get noticed. Then that's something that comes into play,
yeah,
which, it does speak into this, either way, whichever, we spoke about the two key types of men who are cheating earlier, but whichever one you look at, there is a sense of immaturity there. There's a
yeah,
sense of lack of ability to maturely express oneself and take responsibility,
yeah.
in and seeing the impact that that has on others and even themselves. So it
Mm,
does it does really speak heavily of the boy in the man,
yeah, yeah,
playing out.
yeah, yeah. I'd definitely say for me, it was a case of like an inability to communicate, and also like and acting out. I think, as you kind of put it, is
Mm,
like acting out as a boy. It's like I'm not getting what I want, so I'm gonna kind of punish you
mm,
without you knowing I'm punishing you elsewhere outside. And it
yeah.
is like you said, it's a very immature, it's a very kind of boy tendency to do, is to act out secretly. You know,
Mhm.
like it's the sort of thing we did with kids. We would steal something that no one cared about, or we would um, break something and try and hide it or something like that. Do you know what I mean? It's like that
Yeah, yeah,
boy
yeah.
tendency, and it's just like not becoming a man, not becoming a mature man, and still
Mm,
acting out in ways that, as an adolescent, actually, it's like as that's what adolescents would do.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, so I think the interesting thing then, if we move into the next area, which is like the impact that it actually has on the cheater, on the guy. And I think this is something, as we were saying before, it's not something commonly spoken about, but given we
Mm,
both have our own experiences, we can definitely speak from that space, and say and share, like, what we went through for ourselves, and what we know of others. And I think for me, like, there's an inherent guilt and shame
mm,
that is created. It kind of opens up a black hole of shame, and self vilifying,
mm,
and so then feeling very distant and separate from not only my partner at the time, but also society. Like
mm,
feeling like I am like a wrongdoer in society. And I'm imagining now, like, people back in the day, they used to put people in stocks,
yeah,
in the town square, and so everyone can see that they've done something wrong. And then there's with that comes this inherent feeling, or this inherent need, rather, to hide. Like,
yeah,
there's something now I must hide. I'm lurking. I'm like, I'm finding it difficult. And I put down here, I mean, this is, like, there's other things here, but it starts to become like you're unable to fully be free and open, because every
mm,
every second thought is about that, is about
yeah,
having cheated, is about having done something, is about
mm,
when will they find out, is about,
yeah.
how what's going to happen. So yeah, I think there's a lot about separation and hiding.
Yeah, yeah. And it becomes this kind of shadow behavior, because you tuck it into your
Mm,
shadow, don't you? It's like, I've done
mm,
this thing that's bad and wrong, and I'm ashamed and I feel guilty about it. And I can't tell anybody, because if I
mm,
tell them, they will realize what I know is that I am bad. I'm disgusting. Actually, comes to mind is the feeling for me. It was like, I
mm,
feel
mm,
disgusting. I feel wrong. I feel broken. And if anyone else knows this, they will know my secret about me, and they will, the feelings of like being disowned by the people being ostracized, like all these things. And as much as in the moment of doing the cheating, things aren't on your mind. It's like afterwards, and you sit with the feeling of what you've done. You kind of replay, and it's that kind of feeling of like, oh, I didn't need to do that. Why did I do that? And then you start to the kind of you start a different story, because often going into the cheating, your story is like you kind of find verification of why what you're doing is okay.
Mm,
You're like you solidify your reasons. You find this confirmation bias everywhere, and then afterwards, it's like the fucking floodgates open, and you're like, "Fuck, what sort of man am I?" You question yourself as a trustworthy individual. Your own integrity
mm,
becomes in question. Some of you listeners will be like, "Well, of course, that's how you should feel." But actually, it's like, imagine carrying all that. Like maybe for
mm,
those people out there who've never cheated on anyone, imagine carrying that feeling. Equate that to maybe you cheated on an exam at school, or you stole something from somewhere, and how you carried that through your life and the impact on all of your actions day to day, all the time. Like, you were talking about hiding with a partner. It's like, imagine you're watching a TV program, and in the program there's cheating. Instantly, there's more separation between you and your partner, because
mm,
you're sitting there thinking, fuck. If she only knew. And it actually creates, and it's this cycle. It actually creates more conflict in your relationship,
mm,
because what happens is there's moments where you're silent, you're not communicating, you're feeling you're in your guilt, you're in your shame core, as it was described in a book I've been listening to. And in those moments, you're not communicating, and then your partner reacts to this of like, what's wrong? What have I done wrong? What's going on here? And then it creates a new problem that wasn't even there before.
yeah, and so, yeah, like from experience as well, it's like this sense. Speaking into what you're saying, it's like this sense of literally like eating you alive, like
Mm,
this sensation. Um, and I remember feeling like it's kind of like similar to, say, a car crash where there's no going back from it. Like the
yeah.
reality is inherently changed, and now it's like, what, like, how am I going to face this? Like, what is this? How does the future look from here? So there's a real
Mm,
despair, in having created a problem yourself that can't be fixed in that way. Like there's a
mm.
sense that it can't be. You can't just make it go away.
You
It's
can't
like,
you know what? You can't just rewind. You can't undo
mm,
it. You
yeah,
can't undo that.
as much as you might think you can. Yeah, and really being unable to focus, constantly,
Mm,
as David was mentioning, constantly distracted by even the slightest mention of something similar, or you're already there in your mind, like, oh gosh, like, oh god, they know. There's a great song, isn't it, by J. Cole, She Knows.
she knows.
She knows.
She
Yeah,
knows.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, it's like that feeling, like, oh my god, she knows, like,
Mm,
and always tiptoeing in your mind around that, just like
mm.
thinking to yourself, like, oh my god, she knows. And then, yeah, it's not a nice feeling. It's like, walking around landmines all the time, just waiting for one to go off, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like it's that
Mm,
feeling of, it's really stupid things as well. It's like someone could literally say something about a woman that's similar to the woman you might have slept with, and instantly you're on this, like, if basically you're always on fight or flight. You're constantly engaging in this fight or flight mode, because you're like, oh fuck, I need to be on alert. I need to, act. Even thinking, oh, I need to act normal.
yeah.
But deep down there's this worry. It removes, and it does. It just removes all the freedom from your ability to express yourself.
Mm, mm. Yeah. Yeah, you're now playing in a different game, and I put in here as well, like how, one of the things is like needing to talk. It's
Yeah.
like not wanting to talk, but like obviously not wanting to share about it, but needing to talk. Like this urge to say something to someone, because you're carrying this burden, carrying this shame, and it's
Mm,
burning you up inside. And even, crossing your mind, like, should you mention it to your partner? Like, if
yeah.
so, how, and what will the impact be? And, like, it's catastrophic, right? Just the thoughts, not even having to speak about it, but just the thought of it all. It's even as we talk about it now, I can feel into it again.
Mm,
It's like this
yeah,
chaos,
yeah, yeah.
pure chaos and drama of a magnitude that, you wouldn't wish on anyone. You wouldn't
No.
wish this on anyone. And
Mm,
and actually, as I say that, like, I do want to say as well, I think we're talking a lot from our own experience, but I know there occurs, perhaps, a guy, or or perhaps even yourself, you feel like, nah, that's not how I feel, or that's not how they feel. It's psychologically, it's just one of these things that for most people, it will, like have an emotional impact in the way that we're discussing here, because for most of us good-hearted human beings, we feel a sense of I suppose you could say like moral like we have a moral compass. We all
Mm,
know there's a great line I think from Jordan B. Peterson. He said it. He said like, you as a human, you know what's wrong. You don't need to know why it's wrong. You just know what's wrong. So,
mm.
and if you have something that you know what's wrong, stop it. So that was his. But it was interesting, right? He was like, you don't need to know why it's wrong. We just have a
Mm.
sense of things that are right and wrong, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, I think
yeah,
that's
yeah.
another one that really plays on people's mind.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, it's like, and I think sometimes what happens is people look at men that cheat and women that cheat and go, oh, they don't even care about what they've done. But
Mm,
but you just don't see it. You're not, the
yeah.
way they're acting isn't the way that you are expecting them to. So you assume that it's not happening. It's like a
Mm,
lot of things in life. When people don't react in the way we expect them to, we assume that they're not feeling what we think they would be feeling. In fact, they are. It's like, sometimes people become indignant. Sometimes people become defensive or blasé about it. And sometimes, something that men do a lot actually in the impact is rationalization,
mm,
rationalizing their behavior and saying, what I've done is perfectly fine because, and then they have a reason, usually one of the reasons why we've set up in our first section. And there's this rationalization. And you think, oh, okay, they don't care, they're heartless. But underneath it is a psychological impact that they're even not aware of.
mm,
That's
mm,
actually, and I think you put it really well earlier, is like eating them alive.
mm. Yeah, yeah. So the topic du jour then is how to stop.
Yeah, I felt like I had to shake all that off. It was really
Mm,
heavy, the
yeah,
earlier
yeah.
bit.
I wonder what you were doing there. Yeah.
How to stop? Yeah, I think it's like how do you get out of the cycle of cheating? In a relationship, it's interesting. I was listening to a podcast called "How to Fail." I can never remember what the woman's called, and it was featuring a guy called Ovi. Most people know him from Love Island, but I learned that he's also a basketball player.
Mm,
And he talked about how he cheated on his girlfriend once, and he said he cheated on her once, and the way he felt was so bad that he never wanted to do that again. And he talked about one of the reasons, the way he made sure he never did that again, was he just made sure he never put himself in the situation where that was an easy thing to do.
mm,
And he made sure that he learned to communicate in his relationships, like what it is that he really needed, what he
mm,
desired. So I think that's one of the huge reasons why cheating happens is that people have desires, and it can be sexual desires, it can be, I'm thinking, non-sexual, it could be just like how they want the relationship to look, how they want to discuss things, the direction of relationship, all these things, right? But they don't really know how to express them, and it becomes an unmet expectation or an unmet need, and that builds a tension and a frustration in them, and they go and release that in some way. So it's just like learning to just say, this is what I really need. And not necessarily in those words, but in conversation, in writing, whatever way works for you, is to actually express what you need from the relationship.
mm. Yeah, I think there's a lot of it that comes in, and I suppose this is with maturity, right? It's the maturity of being able to communicate what it is that you want, and without having the shame to do so. So, having open conversations about your sexual desires or how you feel in the relationship, just in general, like how you feel. I think so many of us feel a certain sense of pressure for how a relationship should be or what it's
Mm,
supposed to be, and we forget, we all started life as single beings and having this experience and never then necessarily checking in with the other person or even expressing how we truly feel in a partnership with someone, and any desires that or anything, any requests that we have, or how we like things to be. And yeah, communication goes a long way in actually creating connection as opposed to
mm,
creating separation.
One thing that kind of sprung to mind actually was kind of letting go of your assumption of how you think someone's going to react as well to requests and desires, because I think that gets in the way of communicating a lot. Is like, oh, I can't ask for I don't know, maybe you have a fetish of a sexual need, or maybe you wanna travel, you wanna spend time with your friends more, and you've assumed that by even requesting that thing that there's going to be a conflict. And actually, it's like, how about you learn to request that? Not I don't say request, but actually discuss that in a way that you take into account your feelings and also compassionately loving your partner at the same time in the discussion, and that will allow you to flow with the kind of the word comes to me transmission, but it's like, the request for what it is that you need or what you want in a relationship.
Mm.
It's just doing that can work absolute wonders. And one of the other points, I think I'm really big on this one actually, is creating opportunity in your relationship for experiencing your relationship as new. I think a lot of us get into this cycle in relationship of just like, not I want to call it going through the motions almost. It's like, oh well, we're together now. I don't need to do anything special. We don't need to go out together. We don't need to be spontaneous anymore. I don't need to treat you in the same way I did when I treated you at the beginning of the relationship.
Mm.
And I think this thing is just like so important to work at in your relationship. Is like, okay, and it's both parties. It's not one party's responsibility. It is both your responsibility in the relationship to make an effort for it to feel new, to feel fresh, give it zest and zeal, because
Mm.
otherwise it feels stale and moldy, right? And that's where, the relationships feel stale and moldy. One of the partners starts to look elsewhere for their energy, whether that
Mm.
be cheating, whether that be other exploits. So like doing things to make your relationship feel new, surprising your partner, that might be going out for dinner to interesting places that you're both interested in, or doing things that what you would do when you were, just think back. What would you do if you were going to take out your partner on a first date and you didn't know anything about them, and try
Mm.
that? Like I knew of a couple, and they used to play a bit of a game where I think it was once every couple of months. She would go to a hotel, check herself in, and he would turn up there, and they would basically role play him trying to pick her up again. He'd
Yeah,
go
that's
over
from
to a bar
that was a movie,
and be
right?
like, "Hey, was it a movie? Oh,
Yeah, oh,
cool.
I know it from a movie.
Are you sure? Is that not something you
Yeah,
do?"
yeah. No, no. Well, I mean, it's a good idea, but I think it's also I actually know the movie. I can't remember the name, but yeah. No, it's a great point, and to add to that, like the thing to recognize is that that's that's a must in the sense that um like when you consider like how things were in the beginning, it's very unlikely in the beginning that you were already in a relationship and living together or whatever, and
Mm,
so, and so there was a particular dynamic at the start where you didn't see each other as much, whereas as things progress you tend to either move in together and you see each other more. There's more I suppose convenience in time, and if you don't create something, then changes are happening and they will have an impact in like in terms of familiarity, as you say. Like it just becomes like, oh, we're together now, this is just how it
mm,
is, I don't need to do anything. um and so there is an inherent requirement to actually inject that energy in the same way as there's a requirement that if you want to stay healthy, that you have to inject some energy into fitness. And
yeah.
so yeah, if you want your relationship to feel fresh, then you have to inject that energy into it, otherwise it's going to tend towards stale. It's in the same way as your fitness is going to
Mm,
tend towards unfit. It's just the
yep.
way of the world, right? So yeah, it's really important. It's a really great point you made, and I think it's really important that the focus is brought into it. I think one of the things that really played a major role in my change of behavior and just waking up to the impact that we discussed already, like the impact that cheating has on a man, and so waking up to that impact and experiencing it and just realizing that's not how I want to experience life. Like I don't want to live life in that way.
Mm,
And so the emotional impact, the shame, the guilt, the fear, the constant worry, all of these things, it's not how I would like to live. So this for me, very much similar to this guy you were saying, who said he stopped cheating because he didn't like that, right? So it's just realizing that yeah, there is an impact, and you're in control of that, right? And so if you don't want to feel that way, then there are other ways that you can resolve. And as we discussed,
Mm,
you can learn to communicate, or you can have difficult discussions about how things are not working. Right? It's better to
mm,
be as 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 someone said to me recently, the clear road is the easiest to travel. It's not
mm,
easy to keep it clear, but it's definitely the easiest road to travel in life. And it's
mm.
almost like a daily practice to keep your road clear in general, to
Yeah.
make sure that you're acting not just in cheating, right? And we're not saying we're like struggling just to keep that road clear, but in all aspects of life. But definitely this is a huge one. And alongside that one, I would say acknowledging that there is an invisible impact on your
Mm,
relationship if you cheat. And it's important to acknowledge that it's invisible. Just because you can't see the impact doesn't mean that there isn't one. And I know this is something David and I are, we would talk about this, right? We would say, yeah, like if someone came to us and they were talking about this, we would say, yeah, there is an impact. Maybe
mm.
you haven't seen it, but there is one. Even if you think your partner doesn't know, your behavior has now changed in the
Yeah.
relationship, and that has muddied the water. And
Yeah.
and so now you're drinking from a muddy chalice.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a real energy shift as well.
Yeah.
Like if you're going and getting your needs met elsewhere, maybe you're no longer focusing your sexual energy on your partner, and boom, she feels that. She's like,
Mm,
oh, what's the change been? And maybe to say a really tired and worn example would be, said guy not getting what he wants sexually from a relationship, and then he goes and he plays away from home, as the saying says, and he stops trying to have sex with his wife or girlfriend, and suddenly she starts feeling, oh shit, I'm really unattractive to him now.
mm,
Oh, before he was always wanting me, and now he doesn't want me. And then that shifts the impact in their relationship. How she's acting with you. Maybe she becomes a bit sullen and unhappy. Maybe these are things that are happening. Maybe it makes her more argumentative or whatever it may be. Right? Who knows how that impact can look? But actually, there's an energetic side of like where you're putting your energy elsewhere.
mm, mm.
You're not putting it towards your relationship and your partner.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, that's a valid one, and that is the invisible thing, right? You don't see that
Mm,
energy or
yeah,
transference.
yeah,
But that is having an impact, and it's inherent. Like everything in life is cause and effect.
yeah.
So it's constant, like the old butterfly effect, right? Everything we do has some impact. It's a particular path; it goes a certain way. So
Mm,
your behavior changes, and then let's say become a regular thing, then that the first one led to the second cheating encounter, the third one, and so now it's opened a door of that,
mm,
and that has changed, and so yeah, there's always an impact, and so it's
yeah,
important to recognize that. And when you do recognize that, then you know that there is no light version of this. There is no
yeah.
like, oh yeah, it's okay because I've chosen the light option, and the
Mm.
light option has minimal impact. There's a minimal cheating footprint.
Yeah. Cheating footprint.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've taken all the precautions to minimize the impact, so it should be fine.
Mhm.
Like
I
it
bought
doesn't
my
work.
cheating tokens to
Yeah,
offset my cheating. I
yeah,
planted some trees.
yeah,
Nah,
yeah. I
doesn't
give
work
money
like
to
that.
charity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Like it doesn't, because, like we've discussed already, there's an emotional, psychological impact on yourself, and then as we've now gone to some length in describing you, the energetic impact on your relationship and those around you.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's just all about having difficult conversations. It's like I think one of the important things in there also is just like acknowledging that there is something wrong in your relationship. I think sometimes
Mm,
people go, oh, but it's fine. Everything else is, and I've heard this phrase before. You know what? Everything in a relationship is fine apart from,
mm,
and you're like, well, that means the relationship isn't fine for you if that's where your focus is at as well.
mm.
If your focus is on the thing that's wrong and that's causing you to do this other thing, then this is a thing you need to put your attention to. Really put attention towards that. And yeah, I think that's an important thing to do there. But I feel like we've given you a lot there to go on. I'd
Yeah.
say also around the stopping. I think one of the things to one thing that's just kind of sprung to mind is actually analyzing your male role models in your childhood and what relationship
Mm.
looked like. Because in fact, if you find yourself in cycles of cheating, I call it cycles, where you're often cheating on your partners, you need to look and go, what did relationship look like when I was growing up? And if you start seeing lots of broken relationships, lots of cheating, infidelity, and those sorts of things, then you see that your model for relationships is actually broken, and that you potentially need to go and do some proper work. Whether that be with a professional, relationship therapist or a counselor or what, or even coaching can take you there to a degree. But actually, you have a broken model that you are working from.
Mm.
It's like your model, in your model of the world, 2+2 = 9, and that's how you're living.
Yeah. That's a very good point. And it's actually one of the most pervasive ones. If that's how you grew up, then that's what you see. Then that's basically how you're gonna view life. So yeah, and it's not as simple as just hearing us say it and going, oh yeah, I had that, so it's done. Like, so often these things are intertwined into the very fabric of your being.
Mm,
Um, and it really does take something to. It's almost like it's made up of layers as opposed to just one thread. And so
yeah.
then you really got to work on getting clear on what those layers are, what they mean to you, how they form part of your identity, to really break that down and create something new. A new way of relating to life and women around you.
Mm. Cool. Wow, that was a lot. We managed to get through a lot in the episode there. Just to recap, like we talked about, why men cheat. Ultimately, I think that's a question that, like I said, I think is I'll look in the Bible for that passage, because I believe it possibly will be there somewhere.
The devil.
He's possessed. Oral
It's a
sex
sex
demon.
demon. Yeah.
For those of you who've never seen it, you should Google oral sex demon. It's a wonderful meme/video.
Yeah. Not related to the current topic. Yeah.
Not
Well, actually, maybe it is actually, but yeah.
maybe that's what is really going on.
Yeah.
But and then the second thing is the impact, and I think we really focused on the emotional weight that one carries,
Mm.
um, and actually, it's like it's like a ton of bricks to carry. So yeah, if you know, and I also want to just put in here, if you know someone that's cheating, talk to them, see if they're
Mm.
okay. Actually, talk to them. Don't just be like, oh, he's a fucking dickhead or she's an asshole. Actually, say, hey, how are you doing? How do you feel about this? Because they're probably
Mm.
desperately looking for someone to speak to. And if they're your friend, then you should be there for them in whatever way you are comfortable with being, but actually seeing how they're doing. Because I think it's often we just assume the person is bad and wrong. We never remember that there's an emotional impact that someone is carrying. Have compassion for them nonetheless. And we talked about how to stop. I think a big takeaway from that is really around communicating, learning to communicate, actually learning to see why you struggle with conflict, why you struggle to have difficult conversations. Definitely something for me has been a huge learning for me over the last few years, is like, why do I struggle to have difficult conversations? Why do I
Mm.
struggle to ask what I need and what I want and what I want the relationship to be like? And that's really transformed my relationships in the last few years to no end. Like, I can really, like, no end has that transformed my relationships. So there you have it. That's a really big episode of reflection and thought, and grounded in like real actions you can take, and things that
Mm.
happens to us all. It happens around us a lot. It happens in the world a lot, and we've just shed a lot of light on it, because I think as much as we focused on men, I just want to really say is like, it's not just men who cheat.
Mm.
It really isn't. Like, and I can talk from experience, and also the women and men that I know, it's not just men that cheat. We have this narrative that it's just men, but that's just a narrative. In the same way, we have other destructive sexist narratives that are out there in the world.
Yeah, and if there's well, you know what? Actually, like, let us know your thoughts on this episode. Feel free to email us, or you can write a comment on Instagram, and yeah, let us know your thoughts on this episode. Is there anything that we missed in terms
Mm,
of the three areas? What has your experience been? And if you have any questions at all, do get in touch and let us know. And perhaps, something in this episode has inspired you to contact us about coaching. And if so, reach out we're always open to talking and discussing, and you can reach us on hello@authenticdatingseries.com.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, it's a space of no judgment with us. We understand how anyone can do anything, or how anyone can get in a certain situation. We really do. Oh, thank you for being with us for this episode. It's been, I imagine it's emotional for some of you, and for us as well.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It was a very charged episode, I think, going into it.
I feel mildly healed as well through going through the episode myself.
Yeah, it was an interesting one to do, and I think an important one to do because it's a big topic, as you say. And I'm not sure if you mentioned it at the start, but cheating is something that is quite rife in society, whether rightly or wrongly. But there's a lot of pain that's created for everyone involved, and so I think this is a very important episode for that reason. Because it's not the mature way to act in this world, in today's world. We're really a stand for people moving through fully expressed and in their power. And I wouldn't say cheating would be acting from your power.
Yeah, totally agree there. Totally agree. So yeah, thank you. It's been a wonderful episode. You know where to find us. We've told you all that stuff. I guess until next week, I'll say ciao, ciao.